I call the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Gives me pleasure to rise to speak to this Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 2. Mr Speaker, as the Minister has traversed and the Chairperson of the Local Government and Environment Select Committee has just resumed her seat has traversed, this is indeed a minor technical amendment. But it is important. It's not a minor technical amendment of the sort that the state sector was in 1986. But I'm pleased that the chairperson of the Local Government and Environment Committee is in the House, because there are a couple of things that I need to raise that are of relevance to that committee. And I'm very pleased that the Minister is here also, because one of the things that has concerned me about this is not its function as it is stated, because that is perfectly supportable. In fact, not only is it supportable, it's the right thing to do. It is taking transitional arrangements, transitional regulations, and putting them into primary legislation, which is where transitional regulations ought to be. They ought to be in primary legislation so that they can be brought before this House, they can be referred to a select committee, and they can then be debated upon and passed. But the concern I have, and I would like the Minister to address this at some point if he is able, and that is that this is in the explanatory note of the bill. It says that currently local boards are able to delegate their responsibilities to an individual, a committee of the local board, or an officer of the council, and that's fine. That was under the transitional local government brackets, Auckland transitional provisions, close brackets, delegations, development contributions and trade wastes regulations 2010. The point is that in front of the Local Government and Environment Select Committee at the moment is the Resource Management Reform Bill, which has been vexed by the question of transitional regulations. And the transitional regulations, which the Select Committee has applied itself to quite properly, and I think the Chairperson has seen that through in a very fair and admirable way. But I wonder if there is something not matching here, because in the Resource Management Reform Bill, we have been considering the Local Government, open brackets, Auckland Transitional Provisions, close brackets, Act 2010. And I want to know, is that just a shorthand version of the long name that I read previously that's in the explanatory note of the bill we're reading tonight? And if so, why don't we do the whole thing? Why don't we have the regulations that were in the original Resource Management Reform Bill that gave the Minister extraordinary powers to make regulations which could have contradicted the primary legislation? Why not put the correction of those into the Local Government Auckland Council Amendment Bill number 2? Because it seems to me that these two pieces of paper are trying to address the same piece of legislation. So does that mean then, Minister, that if we proceed to pass this and next Tuesday this gets presented to the House, which is, without breaching privilege, the Local Government and Environment Select Committee's report on the Resource Management Bill, if we then table this next Tuesday, will this go forward to the deliberation in the Select Committee of the bill that's under consideration tonight? Because it would seem to me that is the only way to tidy up something which at the present moment looks like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And so I'm very concerned about that, because we spend some time on regulations. It's not just because I'm chair of the Regulations Review Committee, but it seems to me that there was a step missed here, something that doesn't quite fit altogether. And it's simply because of sitting on the Local Government Environment Select Committee, which I presume this bill will come to in due course. I missed the Minister's opening comments in his speech, but I presume that was the committee that this would be referred to. So in that respect, then, it would be good if we could have the Minister's permission in advance to use the changes that we're going to make in the Resource Management Bill to dovetail with the changes that he is seeking in this piece of legislation. Otherwise, we are going to send the Auckland Council searching far and wide for the extent of its own powers and the limits of the Minister's powers, because what we have seen to date in ministerial behaviour towards the Auckland Council has been an overbearing, overweening, bullying, as my colleague Sua Williams-Seo said a moment ago, approach to the Auckland Council. Well, if this is a divide and rule sort of approach, where it's part of giving the Auckland Council busy work to find out which piece of legislation they're meant to be looking at, then it's worked. Well, it would have worked if I hadn't spotted it. So what I need to know from the Minister is, was this deliberate or was it simply an accident? If it's an accident, it can be fixed at the Local Government Select Committee. If it was deliberate, I'd like him to own up and say, we prefer to keep Auckland Council running round in tiny circles as much as possible because we'd really like to exercise as much power over them as we can possibly do. And so whether it's resource management consents or whether it is the delegation of responsibilities, duties and powers conferred to local boards, this should all come under, in my view, the Local Government brackets Auckland Council close brackets Amendment Bill number 2. So on having made that point, Mr. Speaker, I hope that the Minister will pick that up and direct officials just to have a look at the coincidence between those two pieces of legislation and try to align them wherever possible so that the same advisers who will come to advise the committee on this piece of legislation might be the same people who advised us on this piece of legislation, so we can get all the ducks in a row. And I think that would be really helpful, and it would help the order of the House, and it would help the smooth transition of the Auckland Council to its many responsibilities. Mr. Speaker, I think that putting the transitional provisions into the primary legislation is the right thing to do. They were there as transitional until the 31st of October of this year. I have no problem with the delegated authority that exists, because even if the authority to do certain things is delegated, it is still the responsibility of the Auckland Council in law, and still the responsibility of the local board in law. And so that means that what we should have is primary legislation that gets all the scrutiny of the House and all the scrutiny of a select committee. Transitional regulations are problematic. It is a favourite device of this government, and the fewer of them we have, the better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the honourable member Denise Rowe.